Okay, I'm going to try and do this in as fewer takes as possible, and I also have a notebook here so that I don't forget anything I meant to say. Yeah. Hey, if you're watching this, you're probably someone who's about to start your wondrous 2-year journey into GCSEs. Or you're someone who has the exams fairly soon and you realise that you probably should have started revising a little bit sooner. But it happens to the best of us. So whether you're new to the system or you're already in it, I have just finished my GCSEs and I wanted to make a quick video about how I prepared for the exams, like revision tips, or if you're brand new to this, like you're year 9, you're going to choose your options, what to kind of expect from a GCSE kind of course. There are going to be 3 main aspects to the video. The first part's going to be what to expect. The second one is revision tactics and equipment must-haves. And the last section is all about stress management, which is something I struggled with particularly during GCSEs, because GCSEs are as much about the mental preparation as it is actually doing the exam. So firstly, what to expect from a GCSE system. I will say this right now, that GCSEs are not easy. So if you think you can kind of cruise and take the back seat, you are very, very wrong and should probably click off this video right now. I'll just wait for you to do that. Still with me? Good. So when it comes to choosing your options, the main 2 options are BTEC and GCSE. With BTEC, it's mostly coursework, but there's still usually an exam at the end of the 2 years. And GCSEs have a little bit of coursework, but it's mostly graded upon how you perform in the exams. The reason for there being 2 different things is because if your exam technique isn't very good, you could choose to do BTEC, whereby you get the same qualification but you do a lot of the work outside of the exam hall. So it means if you do bomb the exam, it's fine, you got lots of marks to back you up. And with GCSE, a bit of coursework to like give you the backbone, but it is mostly exam work, which if you're good at, that's the one to go for. Although now that I think about it, I know that was the old system, and I was one of the last people to do the old system, and I've literally just finished my GCSEs. So I think they're changing it slightly. So anything I say, please double check with your school. But I would imagine the principles for these 2 options will still be there, even if they're not called BTEC and GCSE. Moving on. So when it comes to doing the actual exam, it's normally in a hall or a gym, and you have to find your allocated seat at an individual desk. And I was given a plastic bag to put in any of my data. This light is so frustrating. I'm really sorry, I don't have any decent lighting, so now you've got to put up with this. When it comes to doing the actual exam, it's in an exam hall and you are assigned a seat at an individual desk. And I was given a plastic bag to put in all my data storing equipment, so mobile phones, MP3 player, and also Apple Watches, because now that Apple have done this thing where watches can store data, you have to put those in the bag, and I think this has now changed the whole rule with watches in general. We used to be allowed to, I think, take a watch in, but take it off and put it on the desk in front of us. But because now Apple Watches are a thing, watches that store data exist. So I think all watches have to be handed in. There should always be a clock. See, the light is doing this again. I'm sorry. I can't do anything about this. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the must-haves, as in what equipment's ideal to help you with revision. And I'm just gonna read out the list that I've got here. Number 1. Colourful sheets of paper normally used for mind maps. 2. Lots of flashcards. 3. Colourful pens. 4. Sticky notes. 5. Internet access. 6. MP3 or phone. And 7. Friends.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
Anyway, you probably noticed I've been mentioning colours quite a bit. And I know that people assume, oh, girls have this thing where they've got to colour code everything. And yes, it looks pretty, but there is now a reason for it. The reason I say colourful sheets of paper and colourful pens is not only am I a girl that likes to use different colours on things, but there was recently a study done whereby our brain kind of associates different things with colours. To try and explain what I mean, there was a test done, I can't remember when it was, but it was to see what colour people associated with maths. So people were given this very basic test like what's 1 + 2, 3 + 4, like really easy mathematical stuff. And then they were asked the last question, think of a vegetable. And every one of them said carrot. So we don't know why, but the link with orange and maths is a thing. So that meant if you were to do revision on orange paper or orange flashcards, you were more likely to remember it. It's more complex to understand than that, but that's the gist of it. I know it sounds dumb, but I've always kind of done this system. So for anything I do maths related, I'd try and revise or draw mind maps on orange paper and flashcards. If it was geography or biology, I kind of go for green because that's what I consider to be the colour. Chemistry, I always had a yellow book, so I did it on yellow paper. Physics, it was a red one because, again, a red book, I always consider the colours linked to the books I was given at school. So that's basically where the colours kind of come into it. It's something about retrieving the data, so when you're in the exam hall and you're like, maths paper, think orange, and it's suddenly, I don't know, it's that kind of thing, but that's how your brain does it in its subconsciousness, so don't question science. You can normally buy flashcards in packs, but honestly, buy so many packs, because trust me, you get through a lot of flashcards. But having said that, I was a bit of an idiot, and I'll explain why. Don't try and copy out all the textbook notes onto your flashcards. That defeats the point. That's what I tried to do. Waste time, you don't learn anything, don't bother. Basically take the very key information, even if it's just like one sentence worth, and put it on the flashcard. Boom, that page is done, move on to the next page. Don't sit there for hours doing every detail of the page because you're not going to remember anything that way, and you just waste a lot of trees and a lot of flashcards, and it's not fun. And this kind of moves us into the revision kind of section of like how to do it. The first thing to understand is everybody learns differently through visuals, audio, or actions. So if you're not sure what kind of learner you are, there's probably like online tests you can do, or you might already know. I was a visual and a action person, whereby I'd more likely to remember things if there were diagrams, hence visual, like drawing something, or if it was action, whether it be like you're given so many sticky notes and you've got to physically put them places and like swap them to get the information right. Or sometimes it was even just writing down things onto flashcards, the actions of writing things out, maybe you remember it. So while getting flashcards from relatives who've already done their GCSEs is great, it isn't as useful as making it yourself because you haven't made it yourself, is what I'm trying to say. So, okay, you have done no revision, where do you start? That's probably the most common question every student asks every teacher ever. Well, here's how I started. I started making general mind maps for all of the things I had to revise, and just like do it subject by subject, or only spend an hour on each subject and over several days, so you're not cramming it in, like space it out. And then when I'd finished doing the general mind maps, I moved on to making flashcards, whereby I revisited every topic but in more detail and putting more questions on the flashcards. Now earlier I mentioned post-it notes, and for this you'll need quite a lot of post-it notes. There's another technique for revision which I didn't use personally, but I know it's very effective, and it's called method of loci. Basically it's kind of where you visualize your house and you put post-it notes on familiar settings like the sofa in the living room or the countertop on the kitchen, I don't know, it's whatever you want. And normally on these post-it notes is an object that you're trying to remember, or maybe even some vocab that you're trying to remember for a language exam. I'll leave a video in the description of this actually in action, a demonstration of it happening, because I couldn't comprehend what this meant until I saw it actually happen. Basically the video is of a little girl going around to her own house, and the order of room she goes into and looking at certain objects, she can remember every US president, which I think is pretty cool, and she's only 9 years old. So this does work, it's just it might not work for every subject. Like I said, maybe it only works for lists, like a vocab list for a language exam. But it is another method which is proven effective. I just didn't use it, but that's another option you can take. Another effective way of revising, or even just understanding what you're trying to learn, go watch an animation, and sometimes a quick 2-minute animation can save you hours of work slaving through books to try and find what it is about that you don't understand how it works. Now, if you're somebody who learns through audio, I wasn't someone who could learn through audio, but this is for you. Get a phone or MP3 player and record yourself reading out revision notes which you want to remember for an upcoming exam. Continue to do daily activities, but listen to yourself with these notes, and eventually you'll kind of absorb the knowledge. Now the other thing, which I don't think anybody I know has tried, but if you fall asleep listening to your notes, apparently your subconscious takes it in and you can retrieve it like that later. I haven't tried that, I don't think it'd work for me. But also I don't think I'd be able to sleep very well if I had earbuds in talking about physics all the time. You know, that would really drive me mad. But if you don't want to do that, there is another way you can learn through audio. It's by making mnemonics, songs or rhythms to like remember a certain set of notes. For example, in biology we had to learn the order of classification for organisms, as in what came first of kingdom, phyla, class, order, family, genus, species. So instead of it being that, which is slightly difficult to remember, the teacher put it into this little rhyme for us. King Philip came over for good sex. We did not forget that, and we will pass the exam with flying colours. The final thing of how to revise is past papers. So many past papers. I kept 2 folders filled with past papers of maths, and I did one almost every day and marked it. And the same goes for any past paper. If you learn to get familiar with the mark scheme, you'll know how to answer a question and you'll get all the marks. Because ultimately, when your exam's marked, it's somebody marking based off these rules they've been given by the exam board of if they answer with this keyword, you give them this mark. So as long as you understand the mark scheme, you have no problem, and the only way to understand it is to do loads of past papers and get experience. Okay, I know I said the last one was the last one, but this is the ultimate last one. Sometimes just talking to somebody for 10 minutes on a particular topic, so whether it be friends, teachers, you remember an awful lot. Honestly, people in my year probably saved my life because we've been talking about Mice and Men, or Lord of the Flies, and like what happens and like what to remember for the exam, and then the question comes up and it's what we've been talking about and I remember everything from that conversation. Okay, that's the last one, I promise. Moving on. Stress management will be the last thing I talk to you about, and I feel it's probably the most important, besides revision of course. But if you have any questions about what I've previously said, leave a comment and I'll be hanging around in the comment section answering as many as I can, or if I don't specifically answer to you, I probably have answered a similar question that somebody else asks, so have a look around. Everybody deals with stress in different ways. Personally, I suffer from stress horribly, whereby I can't sleep, sometimes my appetite goes, or if things get really overwhelming, I kind of have a panic attack. I'm reluctant to call them that because I understand there are much worse cases, but sometimes things get so overwhelming and I just kind of crumble. I start hyperventilating, my heart's racing, even though I'm sitting down in my seat, and I'm sweating, I'm shaking, I'm freaking out about something that can be quite stupid or just build up of little things. But once I calm down, I'm fine and there's never any issue with it. But if you're somebody who suffers horribly from stress like I do, don't worry, this is a support group. We're gonna get through this together, I promise you. So how did I deal with stress and revising for exams? Well, there are some steps I took. If you've been working flat out, or if you don't get something, you're just getting really frustrated, just stop, take a break, watch YouTube videos for 15 minutes, you'll be fine. Trust me, you'll be fine. Another useful step is to stay away from people who are stressing. So say your classmates are over there and they're stressing about the Lord of the Flies, yeah, that's right. They're stressing about the Lord of the Flies exam. You walk right over there, read a book, listen to some music, eat a pie, feel great about yourself, and do not worry about them. Another useful tip is power poses. And what I mean by this is when you wake up in the morning, you're gonna get out of bed, you're gonna feel great, and you're gonna pose like Superman, because there's some kind of psychological thing in your head. If you do a certain pose, or like whatever it is, your brain releases either hormones or some kind of chemicals released, and it makes you feel good about yourself. Yes, I can do this, let's take on the world, which is probably useful if you're stressing about exams. Now the last one is quite personal to me, but it is what helped me get through some of the most stressful periods. For example, if I struggle to sleep at night, I could take this natural remedy, whereby it's a few drops in a glass, and it doesn't like knock you out or anything, it's just to help relax your nerves and calm you down so you can get to sleep easier. Likewise, there was a daytime version which I always had a few drops in my water bottle when I went to school every day. So you could have a water bottle in the exam, just take the label off. But I had a clear water bottle with a few drops in, so if I ever was starting to panic or stress out about a question I couldn't answer, just take a few deep breaths, get some water in the water bottle which has the natural remedy in it, and it helps to calm you down, and you continue the paper. The other thing I used was a spray. So if I knew I had an exam coming up, I could just lock myself into a cubicle and spray, and then that again is a natural remedy, helps to calm your nerves so you don't freak out and like do silly mistakes on your exam paper and all of that. But I always locked myself into a cubicle because I was very self-conscious about using a spray, or what people would always ask me what that was, so I decided to just stay completely out of the way and not tell anybody about that. So if you do struggle quite badly like I do, those are some other options that you can buy at like pharmacies. And that is it for the advice, the tips, the tricks, and whatever else you want to class this under. And even if this only helped one person, then my job is done. But don't worry about GCSEs. If you put the work in, it'll be fine, it'll work out well. High five, you're awesome. Please don't worry, it's fine. And with that, I'm going to go. Bye.
Thanks for watching.